been a very public back and forth between all levels of government the past couple of weeks. Toronto's request to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of illegal drugs for personal use in the city. The province has firmly said it is not on board. And now Ottawa has weighed in too, saying it's a no for them. Lane Harrison explains how we got here and what comes next.
The goal of Toronto Public Health's application was to change the way we see addiction, arguing it's a health issue and not a criminal one.
What it's going to take is a full range of interventions, everything from policy and prevention to harm reduction to a full range of truly accessible treatment options, and in some cases, enforcement. But this is an entire spectrum of interventions that's going to be required, as is the case with any other health condition.
The federal minister of addictions said yesterday that decriminalization would not protect public health or maintain public safety. Minister Yara Sachs also said she was concerned by the fact that the province would not support the move, something Premier Doug Ford has made abundantly clear in recent weeks.
Letting people do cocaine and crack and heroin, you got to be kidding me. I will fight this tooth and nail.
The city's request was based on consultation with those doing the work on the ground.
This is just a political maneuver by the Ontario government, who have not taken the overdose crisis seriously since they came to office.
The province argues decriminalization would increase crime, saying a similar pilot program in British Columbia had to be scaled back, and says Ontario will continue investing in treatment services. But this advocate contends decriminalization can go a long way.
But what it will do is stop criminalizing people so that people feel, they're not in and out of the court system, they're not in jails, they're not increasing their risk. And the stigma and discrimination is lessened, so people feel more comfortable accessing services that they need.
Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow is still hopeful all three levels of government can work together.
That is why I've issued a letter yesterday to the Prime Minister and the Premier asking them to come together and focus on a 24/7 crisis treatment program where we can provide the kind of treatment program that people that are addicted desperately need.
She says because the drug crisis is a health issue, the province must be involved. While governments figure out an approach, public health data suggests more than 500 people in Toronto are killed by toxic drugs every year. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
A man is dead after a brazen shooting in Brampton.
Earlier this morning at approximately 7:20 in the morning, we received a call for a shooting in a residential area on Ivor Crescent, which is in the area of Sandalwood Parkway and Mississauga Road in the city of Brampton. Upon arrival, our officers and EMS did locate a male party who had been shot. This male was transported to hospital and unfortunately was later pronounced.
Police say the victim was found inside a car on a driveway when officers arrived. There's no information on a suspect at this time. We spoke to a resident who saw the victim being treated by paramedics.
He was on the ground or driveway, and they were, working on him, like doing compressions, and then the ambulance reversed and put him in the ambulance, and they drove away with him. And I was just surprised to see all this happening because it's a beautiful neighborhood.
Police say they do believe the shooting appears to be isolated and there is no threat to public safety. Anyone with information is asked to contact officers. To Durham Region next, where two people are lucky to be alive after a small plane crashed into a farmer's field. Police say they got the call around 10:30 this morning. The two people had been on board the plane when it went down. They suffered non-life-threatening injuries. It's unclear what caused the crash, but we know Transport Canada has been called in to take over the investigation. Wildfire season is off to an early start out west, and Ontario is sending in firefighters to help battle the flames.
Ontario does participate in the Great Lakes Forest Fire Compact. So this is an agreement between 3 United States and 2 provinces, that being, of course, Ontario and Manitoba. So when a request is made, it is GLFC that will kind of take care of the contract and determining how sources are allocated and such.
40 firefighters from our province were deployed to Manitoba this past Tuesday. A wet spring for us here in Ontario has kept things relatively calm so far, with 51 total wildfires. The ministry is advising anyone who sees one to report it by calling 310 Fire or 911. After a brutal week of being forced from their homes due to fire, finally some good news for residents of Fort McMurray, Alberta. They can go home. Sam Sampson is there.
This is one of the 4 neighborhoods in Fort McMurray now welcoming back residents. More than 6,600 people were ordered to leave their homes earlier this week due to a wildfire burning nearby. But as of Saturday morning, they can come back. And it only took us minutes to see cars start returning.
The timing was just perfect because we were just coming back to town to try and take a shower and maybe get some clean clothes. So yeah, we're excited to get back into our homes now, and the pets can be in their own spaces and not in a little camper.
Back in 2016, it was a whole different. They were too late in ordering the evacuation. This time around, they ordered it a little earlier as a precaution, which is good. They were on top of things, and I know some people were probably disappointed and upset, but it's better to be safe than sorry, and it's nice to come back and find everything just perfect.
I just pulled in. I was like, I need 3 more days worth of cat litter, so I was like, hopefully they'll just let me run in and get some stuff. And he was like, no, go ahead and move in. I was like, okay.
The news came as a bit of a surprise to some people, since officials initially said evacuees should be prepared to stay out of their homes until after the May long weekend. But all this rain has helped firefighters get a bit more of a handle on the situation.
The last thing we want is for people to come back and then have to leave again. That's very stressful. So that's why we gave people the warning that they might be out until Tuesday, but we're very happy that we've made some good progress.
The fire, however, is still out of control.
While it is safe for evacuees to return, residents will have to live with an active wildfire near their community for weeks, if not months. Once sunshine and warm temperatures return, fire behavior will likely increase.
The firefighters brought in to help aren't just packing up and leaving. They will stay here until that fire is considered under control. And there's also a fire ban in effect for the Fort McMurray region, as well as much of northern Alberta. Because as much as this rain and the cool weather has helped firefighting efforts, the province wants to make sure no new fires start this May long weekend. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Fort McMurray, Alberta.
Sophia joining us now on this long weekend. You could hear the rain in Sam's piece there, and you know that's just such welcome news for people out west.
Yeah, more good news to come over the next 24 to 36 hours. There's soaking rainfall, including about 50 millimeters in parts of the northern prairies, about 30 to 20 millimeters in Fort Mac. So this will really help crews suppress that wildfire. It's part of a boundary that will bring rounds of rain in the prairies, but it's keeping an active storm track aimed at parts of northwestern Ontario. We're currently watching some severe thunderstorms move through north of Thunder Bay. That active storm track will keep us in parts of southern Ontario throughout this long weekend in a real unstable warm sector. Here's how it's going to affect our weather into the south over the next 36 to 48 hours. First of all, warm air over the cooler lakes. Foggy overnight period and foggy Sunday morning. Look at the humidex that comes up with this really moist, muggy air mass from the south. Feeling like 30 all across the region for Sunday, feeling like 33 in Windsor for a hot, humid, muggy, and potentially stormy Sunday. Feeling like 30 in Barrie and throughout much of cottage country as well. 30 in Gravenhurst and 30 in Hutsville with the humidex. That hot, humid track continues right until Tuesday, along with an active storm track. I will tell you about the potential for rain on our long weekend parade in the Long Range, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
Turning to some other stories now, the federal government says it's cracking down on toxic emission leaks in Sarnia. It comes after a First Nation first raised the alarm weeks ago about benzene pollution from a local plant. People on the Aamjiwnaang First Nation first noticed massive spikes on their air monitors weeks ago, as we said. The Styrolution plant's operating approval is suspended until major fixes are made. Ottawa issued an order just this week telling all petrochemical companies in the region to better control leaks of the cancer-causing chemical. Turning to the war in Ukraine, Russian forces continue their offensive into the northeastern border region of Kharkiv. Russia says they've taken 12 settlements in just the past week alone. As Trevor Dunn shows us, Ukraine is once again calling on allies for help.
A residential neighborhood in Kharkiv, Ukraine, blasted apart. The destructive power of what officials say was a Russian-guided bomb tearing through the yard and inside this family home. 2 children are among the 5 people injured in the attack, hospitalized, but all will survive. It's the second time this place has been hit, says a family member. I don't know what I'll do. Kharkiv is Ukraine's second largest city, not far from the border. Fighting in the region is intensifying, with Russian forces last week crossing into Ukraine and taking several villages. Activity that some analysts believe is the start of an expected summer offensive from Russia.
Between now and the summer will be very important to see how well the Ukrainians will be able to defend against the Russian, what I call a bulldozer that's coming at them. And it'll come in different times and at different tempos. And I think everything hangs in the balance.
Speaking yesterday during a state visit to China, Vladimir Putin said there are no plans to invade Kharkiv and that his troops are just pushing back after the Ukrainian shelling of Russian territory and creating what he calls a buffer zone. Ukraine's president isn't convinced, saying recent Russian attacks are just the first wave of a new offensive aimed at the northeast. They want to attack, but they understand that Kharkiv is different, he said. It's a big city, and they need to deploy large forces. It's a scenario Zelensky says his military is not prepared for, once again urging allies to provide more air defense and fighter jets, while also conceding his military's own shortcomings, that morale is worsening and new recruits are desperately needed. We need to staff the reserves, Zelensky said. There are a serious number of brigades that are empty. To boost enlistment, new legislation comes into effect in Ukraine this weekend, offering cash bonuses to new soldiers, increasing penalties for draft dodgers, and even allowing for prisoners to join the army. Trevor Dunn, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, Canada is sending new support to Ukraine by donating hundreds of high-tech drones. Gregory Wilson takes us inside a plant in Waterloo where they're being built. He has more on what makes these drones different and how experts hope they could play a key role in Ukraine's war effort.
Here in Teledyne FLIR's Waterloo facility, assembling drone blades is a slow and steady process, a key component of the 800 drones that will be sent to Ukraine in the coming weeks. It's the first time Canada is supplying this type of military equipment since the Russian invasion in February 2022.
We have responsibilities to our NATO alliance. We have responsibilities to support Ukraine.
National Defense Minister Bill Blair made the announcement earlier this year, an investment to the tune of $95 million.
There are so many applications and uses. I think it'll be an absolute game changer.
The drone comes with a variety of different cameras, including infrared capability, and this engineer says it can thwart Russian signal jamming.
Even if the drone was to be tried to be hacked, the drone can continue to operate because it can operate on GPS denied environment. So even though there's no GPS, it could still operate.
So this is, swappable. Users can interchange it for all kinds of capabilities, anything from thermal cameras to radiation sensors, biological sensors, radios, all kinds of stuff, depending on mission need.
Attaching a tether to the drone, the Skyranger can then fly over a single area for days on end, as long as electricity flows.
We have customers that are even using these like radio transmission towers. So if you think of an emergency where power goes out, there's no cellular infrastructure, you can actually attach cellular repeaters to the system, and you essentially have a ad hoc comms antenna for temporary communication.
This gear from Canada may help tip the scales in Ukraine's favor, says this military expert.
We all know that Ukraine is struggling on the front lines, and so nothing like having very high-end capacities to augment the surveillance capabilities that Ukraine has to optimize the decision-making for Ukraine.
Teledyne FLIR will send trainers to Kyiv to help train the first batch of operators. The hope is to eventually fill the sky with a fleet of high-tech surveillance drones. Gregory Wilson, CBC News, Toronto.
5 changemakers are being recognized for their work as part of the YWCA's Women of Distinction Awards. I had a chance to meet one of them. At just 25, Nadia Ladek is the CEO of a startup she founded with her best friends.
Next in the den, friends from business school, hoping a Dragon investment will help boost their cash flow.
Hello, Dragons. My name is Nadia.
Before we get to the Dragons, let's rewind. It's 3 years ago at Western University. These best friends are working on a school project. Find a problem they're passionate about solving.
We started to think about how 50% of the population menstruates for 1 week every month for 39 years, and yet there's been little to no innovation. People are so ashamed and afraid to talk about periods. You know, people were shoving tampons in their sleeve, they're nervous to talk about periods. We always like to say that we're solving the gender pain gap because for so long these products have been stigmatized, people are on autopilot, they just buy the same thing off the shelf.
So they created Marlo, the world's first ever lubricated tampon. It's also 100% organic cotton, free of chemicals. Even the wrapper is compostable.
The biggest innovation is our lubrication. So for people who have pain, especially young girls and women who are just starting to get their periods and use tampons, this lubrication makes it much easier. It's like an easy glide formula to be able to use a tampon for the first time.
The bottle is designed so that you can dip your tampon in it.
Their videos on TikTok going viral with more than 100 million views.
I challenge you.
They even earned a spot on Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Then there's that deal with a longtime Dragon.
Okay, you have a deal.
Awesome. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm excited about working with you guys. And you guys quitting your jobs meant a lot. Like, it means you're all in. So, yeah, congrats.
We're so committed to taking on these doors.
She shakes their hands.
It was definitely nerve-wracking. I remember walking in and we were thinking, we're about to go talk about periods on national television and tell our whole journey and our story and what will the Dragons think about it. And I think we were just really excited that we ended up receiving a deal with Arlene Dickinson.
What does it feel like standing in the middle of a very busy store, a very well-known store, and seeing your product on the shelf?
Yeah, it's so impactful, and we had to get Health Canada and FDA approval to bring the product to market. So now to see in the last 3 years how far the business has grown and how much we've built a community and a cult following around the brand, and now to see it in store, it's just, I'm always filled with so much gratitude to see how far we've come.
A big part of the mission is educating and empowering the next generation about menstrual health, but they also often find themselves in conversations with young people about starting their own business, chasing after their dreams, and making a difference.
I did not even know about entrepreneurship growing up. So my parents immigrated to Canada. My dad was a refugee when he first landed, and they never really talked about entrepreneurship as a career path because for them it was get a stable corporate job, pay off your student loans, and just keep working and kind of building that life. So we never really considered it as a career path. And so I went to business school, I graduated, worked in management consulting, followed that stable corporate path that they wanted. And I came home one day and told my dad, hey, I have this idea for this business, and that stable corporate job that you always wanted me to have, I'm gonna quit that job and go work on this tampon business that doesn't have any funding, doesn't have a fully developed product, but it's something I believe in and I wanna make an impact, and you've always raised us to create a better world. And so while they were shocked at first, they did believe in that idea of making a better product, making a better mission and a movement around menstrual health. So now my dad is one of our biggest supporters, and my mom too. They're so excited about this recognition and this award. They're gonna be at the YWCA Awards with me as well. So they're definitely my biggest sources of inspiration, and my sister and my co-founders as well.
More heartache for hockey fans in Toronto. Our professional women's team is out of the playoffs after losing to Minnesota.
Covering all the angles. From Heisey to Steckline, they trade. Heisey scores! Just like that!
Despite the loss, many fans remain proud and say they're excited to see what comes next for both the league and the Toronto team.
Oh my goodness, the game was incredible. The energy in the game, the talent in the game. You know, we ultimately had more shots on net than Minnesota, so it sucks when they don't land, but it's still what you want to see.
Great to be here with my daughter supporting women in hockey, and seeing all the men here supporting women's hockey is amazing.
Minnesota will now meet Boston in the best-of-5 series starting tomorrow. After a disastrous playoffs for the Leafs, the search to find Sheldon Keefe's successor is finally over. Starting next season, a former Leafs player will be leading the Buds as head coach.
His ability to get them over the hump in the playoffs, that'll be the benchmark for the team going forward. And that's what it always has been. And I think when you have somebody who understands what it takes to win the playoffs, he's obviously done it in this, going all the way to the Stanley Cup and winning it. There's that hump that he can hopefully push these guys to get over.
We're talking about Greg Berube. He spent one season with the Leafs back in the early 90s. He led the St. Louis Blues to a Stanley Cup win in 2019 as head coach. The Leafs will officially introduce him next week. Sophia's back. Really lovely start to the long weekend with some sunshine, but you're saying some rain may be on the way.
Potential storm risk in place for the next few days, Shannon. Hello again, everybody. We've got this unstable air mass over top of us, and it doesn't mean that everybody is going to see storms over the next few days. It just means it's hot and unstable enough that the chance is there. Not a washout at all. In fact, it's going to be the hot spot of the country, our region, over the next few days. Look at the Humidex in on Sunday, feeling like 33 in Windsor, feeling like 31 in Ottawa, and like 33 in Barrie. Much cooler, though. I'll go back to this for a minute, for anywhere around the eastern shore, or the western shores rather, of Lake Ontario, with that east wind off the lake, keeping things a little bit more brisk for those of you around the Golden Horseshoe. Sunday in Cottage Country, high 20s around the region, feeling like 30. Great weekend to be up at the cottage and get that heat. If you do have a storm roll through, it's not going to be a complete washout of your plans. In fact, the heat stays with us, along with a muggy Humidex, feeling like 31 finally in the city of Toronto, right up until Tuesday and Wednesday, until a cold front finally comes through late week. Look at Tuesday up north towards James Bay and north of Superior Shores, feeling closer to 30 as well. In places like Timmins, this warm, unstable air mass that we've been talking about will also bring the risk of fog throughout your evening, overnight, and even morning hours. There's that multi-day storm risk. But look at the feels likes for the next few days in places like Windsor, with that heat and that Gulf moisture really coming in, along with the chance of storms. Enjoy all of that, but lather up if you're headed up into the sun, because we do have a very high UV as well for this warm, hot, muggy, long weekend, Shannon.
Tropical, really, when you look at those numbers.
You don't need a plane ticket.
Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
That's our show, but as we go, we take you to the Distillery District in Toronto.